Hi, Diane here, and I want to show you a journal this evening that I've been working very hard on, and I finally got it done. It's a vintage sewing junk journal that I made for a swap on Junk Journal Junkies. And I'll just show you a few of the things that went into it. This is from the Paper Studio from Hobby Lobby, the haberdashery. It's craft cardstock type of paper, and it has designs on it. And this design right here is what I used for the cover, the front and the back cover. Much of the paper in it is from this paper. This used to be called Keller Kurtz and Company, which I had been wanting, and when I went looking for it, when they had paper at half price, I found it, and then I found this one too, and I thought, well, that's really pretty too, so I bought them both. And when I got them home, I realized they were the exact same tablet. It just has a new name now. One of my friends bought the Keller Kurtz and Company stack from me, so I would have returned it to the store, but she wanted it, so she bought it from me. So now I have Theodosia Square, which is the same as Keller Kurtz and Company. So I don't know why they did that, but I use papers from this in the book, and the paper is all coffee stained. I also had purchased this set of sewing instructions that were from the 70s, early 70s. I found them at a thrift shop, and they were a monthly subscription type of thing. They came in these envelopes, and you would get I think you got a binder with it. I didn't see that. I didn't get that. But I bought the whole pack of papers. But they come with holes punched in them, and chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 would come each month. And so I used some of these pages in the books, in the signatures. They're kind of perforated in the center, so I reinforced them by just stitching a strip of pattern paper in the center, which you'll see as I go through the books. I also used pages from this old Singer sewing book that I purchased at Salvation Army, and I've used pages out of it for other junk journals, but of course it was perfect for this project. Now I'll get into the book. This is the book that I made. So there is the haberdashery cardstock, craft cardstock that I used on the front, and the other part of this paper just went on the back. I used a Tim Holtz vintage label frame there, punched an eyelet, a larger size, well, kind of a medium size eyelet there, and threaded this ribbon through. There's a knot on the other side just to tie it and secure it. We're supposed to use fabric in this journal, and so to wrap around the spine, there's plain craft cardstock on the spine, and I covered it with an eyelet fabric, which I had coffee dyed, but I could see the glue through it, so I added some ribbon. This is a twill ribbon with a measuring tape on it, and this is just some lace. So I added that on it so it hides the glue. So now you really can't see the eyelet, but it's there. And I added this crochet trim to hide the edges of the eyelet that wraps around. I added a larger eyelet here so I could attach this bead. We were supposed to include a bead dangle. So I made this bead dangle. I included, now whoever gets this, if you don't like this button thing that I put on, because it might get tangled up, but it's with floss, and I just stitched buttons, kind of woven needle in and out the buttonholes to hold them in place, and then you can just cut it off if it gets tangled up and you don't like it. Other than that, I have this dangle that I made, and it has some pretty beads. I used some pinks and some mint greens in addition to the neutral colors in the book, and so I used that color of bead, and then I added, there's a sewing machine charm, there's a little wooden thimble or spool, a little metal ruler, a plastic spool, and a metal scissor, and this little kind of a suede, I think, tassel that I thought was cute. So let's look inside. Untie the ribbon. You can see the knot in the ribbon that holds it in place. On this, I had taken a piece of this craft cardstock. This is what's on the outside of the book, covered in eyelet. It's also across the binding on the inside. I took a piece of that cardstock and I Mod Podged some pattern tissue onto it. And I made a pocket, cut a pocket out. It's the edges are folded over to give it a little more give here, and then I glued some rickrack to it. So there's a pocket on the front inside and on the back. And with this leftover of that craft cardstock, I just cut a couple tag shapes, rounded the corners, punched a hole, and added some baker's twine. They will go in a pocket somewhere. I'm not sure where they're going to go yet, but they'll be in the book. So it has 4 signatures, and I stitched it with waxed cotton thread or waxed linen thread, one or the other. It's waxed thread anyway. And I stitched it with the pamphlet stitch, so it's in there very securely. So there's 4 signatures, and each signature begins with one of the Theodosia square papers. And as I said, all of the paper is copy dyed. I printed this from the internet and zigzag stitched it on, and a piece of the rickrack. Each signature has a little ribbon tab going down and in, alternating. And then this had zigzag stitch around here where I'd stitched around the picture, so I stamped address form. We were supposed to include buttons, ribbons, fabric, stitching, and the bead dangle. This is a pair of fancy scissors that I printed from the internet, and also this, advertising a thimble holder. This little ticket was printed from the internet, advertising some silk fabrics. And this is one of those monthly sewing lesson pages. And I used a scrap of the coffee dyed pattern paper to make a pocket. And then this is a cupcake paper and a little stamped journaling spot. I stitched a button through that. And I made a journaling tag. I made 4 journaling tags using these Sizzix. I don't know if you can see it. It's a dress form. It has these designs on it. So I made 4 tags with that embossing set and then inked them so you can see the design better. So there's one of those tags, and I put lined paper on the back of that one. And then here's a tag with a dress form stamped on it. I'll try not to take too long with this. For the fabric, I just use, you'll see different ways that I use little pieces of fabric in the book. And these are little pennants cut out, and I just stitched them across the top and let them flap loose. There's the other half of the cupcake paper and another tag. This paper has the pattern paper, a coffee dyed doily, and this button advertisement that I printed from the internet, wrapped it around. This is a 1970s, let's see, 1970 pattern, and I decorated it with some washi tape, cut a slit here. This is a bookmark that I got from the internet. It says "You have read till here" because it was made into a bookmark, but it's a pattern design. You'll see the other end of the pattern coming up. Here's copy paper that's copy dyed and then stamped. I used a variety of sewing themed stamps in this book. Most of them are quite old. This is gingham paper. I had a sheet of paper from Basic Gray that had cut-aparts, so you'll see some of them. I think the name of the paper was Lucille. I don't know what the paper line was. I just bought that one sheet. But anyway, this is one of the cut-aparts, and as are these. So there's some journaling on them. This is a page from the Singer Sewing book, and I glued on a couple of journaling spots, stitched on the crochet trim, and glued on this little wooden, looks like the top of a thread spool that I got a package of those from Hobby Lobby. This is a 6x6 paper that I've had for a very long time with a bunch of buttons on it. Some copy dyed journaling paper and a scrap of gingham paper that I edge punched. Here's a Tim Holtz dress form. I don't know what paper. This isn't from Theodosia Square, but I've had it for quite a long time. There's some Tim Holtz stamps that came with this dress form stamp. Here's the other end of that button paper. And the Theodosia Square paper has a sheet of these cut-aparts. So I took that dress form and adhered it to the back of that one, sandwiched this in between it, and then just decorated it with a couple of scraps. This is a tab that I cut from with my Cricut, and I cut a button out of some button paper like this, and just glued it in there. Here's the other end of that pattern, and it's got some tags inside. I like that design. Here's the paper that had the holes punched in it. I told you it was perforated, so this is one of the strips that I stitched on it. Some of them are stitched on the inside and some are stitched on the outer edge, but it adds some interest too, besides reinforcing it. And then there's a coffee dyed tag that I stamped on, and some journaling cards. This is tissue paper that was tracing paper that was coffee dyed, and then I glued on this, or stitched on this trim with the mint green trim and the pink rickrack, baby rickrack. This is a Filodex card. I distressed it with distress ink, stamped on it, stitched it on. You can see where it's supposed to go into the Filodex there. And then there's a tag. There's different types of ribbon and seam binding and lace that I used in the tags. This one has a dress form stamped on the pattern paper. Here's the next signature. Has a one of the squares cut from the Theodosia Square paper. It's backed with another scrap of that paper. There's some lace here, and then this is from a doily that I purchased at a thrift shop and cut apart to use the individual little florets from it. I got that idea from Julie the Paper Bag Lady 1 on YouTube. And I glued a button to the middle of that. There's some washi tape here. And I said each of these signatures has a ribbon tab, and there's a button glued. I didn't do it on that one. I have to glue a button there. But there's a button there. This is a strip. I had printed a sheet of sewing printables, free printables, and this is from that. It's a strip of tickets, and they all have a sewing design, and I just wrapped it around this copy paper, so you'll see the other end of it on another page. There was also a sheet of these little yarn cards that I printed from the internet, and I cut them apart. They look like this shape, but I folded this around and glued it on there. And there's a journaling card in here. I had purchased a set of nice journaling cards from Hobby Lobby at a really good clearance price, and they have the pink and the mint green colors, so I decided to use them in this book. However, when I bought them, I didn't realize that they were on clearance because they were Mother's Day cards, so some of them say Mother Dear or Mother or something on them, so I just covered that up with washi tape or scraps of paper or something. Some of the cards didn't have that on it though. So it all worked. Here's another piece of that paper from the sewing club. There's a doily here, a pocket here. There's another one of those. I'm sorry, I keep bumping the camera. A little wooden spool top there, and a tag, and lace. These are banners made with scraps of paper. It's 15 minutes in now, so I'm going to pause this video and make a second video.